Welcome to another edition of the N65 podcast, the podcast where we explore the people, technologies, and ideas shaping the Microsoft ecosystem. Today's guest is Kayode Ajayi. I hope I pronounced this right. He is a Microsoft MVP, solution architect, Microsoft certified trainer, and a recognized expert in the Microsoft Power Platform, Microsoft Copilot, Copilot Studio, and enterprise solution architecture. For more than 7 years, Kay has helped organizations designing and implementation scalable business solutions that combines low-code development, AI, and cloud technologies. He's passionate about helping business innovate faster while maintaining the governance, security, and architectural foundations requirement for enterprise success. Many of us know him also as the co-host of the Power Platform Deep Dive podcast, where he regularly shares practical insights, lessons learned from customer projects, and his perspective on the rapid evolving Microsoft ecosystem. In today's conversation, we will explore the reality of AI implementation, where organizations succeeding, where they are struggling, and what it really takes to move from AI experimentation to measurable business value. So, welcome to the show.
Yes, thank you very much. Hi, Marker. Well, that was a very wonderful introduction. Thank you so much for that. Yeah. I'm glad to be here. I just see your articles, your podcast and stuff. So, yeah, really, really well done. I wish I had the energy you have.
Yeah, can you us tell a little bit about your background? How did you first get into technology, especially Microsoft ecosystem?
Yeah, I'll say for me, I kind of stumbled into the whole Microsoft ecosystem. I think I was at a point in my life when I was thinking about what my career was going to be, because at that point I had done many things. I'd done things around programming, 3D animation, graphic design, video editing. So I tried my hands on so many things, but I didn't really know what my career was going to be at that point then. One way or the other, I discovered the Power Platform. And since then, it's just been me going deeper and deeper into the Microsoft ecosystem.
So you're falling in love with the Power Platform.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I think one of the things that I really loved was just how quickly you could do stuff with it and have like something production and enterprise ready. Using low code tools. Before then, I had done stuff like Python programming, Java programming, but there's like a lot that I would have had to put together, install on my computer, before I could actually get things to work. But with the Power Platform, all I just did was log into a web interface and I could just start creating things. So that just made me love the Power Platform.
And you're very active also in the community. You have the podcast, you're an MVP and also an MCT. So, what motivated you to be so active in the community?
Well, I'll say for me, I've always been a lover of learning and sharing what I know. Even since my university days, I've been like bringing together communities. There was some stuff that I did in school called X of Africa, so which is just bringing together other students within my university, teaching them about technology. Because by then I was learning stuff like Java, Python, and a couple of my colleagues didn't really know so much, even though we were all studying computer science. So, for the most cases, even since then, I've started bringing communities together. So, coming to the UK, I think initially I was very quiet because I was doing my master's degree. So, during that time, well, I didn't have time for any community stuff because, yeah, doing a master's degree is not easy. And interestingly, I actually came out with a distinction, so it was worth it. But after then, I started getting more active in the community, attending user groups. And as time went on, I found myself speaking at some of these user groups. And yeah, I just try to get involved, attend events, and share what I know, basically.
Yeah, I think that is really nice career. I think you're so deep in the Power Platform, and I think most people still see the Power Platform as a citizen developer platform. How will do you describe it today?
So that's very interesting because, especially even when you see Microsoft messaging about the Power Platform, it's kind of geared towards that citizen developer mindset. And then when you now say, well, what's your career, then basically I'm a low code developer.
Mm.
And I think I love being a low code developer because, as I said, when you're doing pro code stuff, there's a lot of extra admin that you need to do, things you have to install and stuff like that. But with a low code development platform, you're kind of building based on something that's been established. But I've been able to exist in this career all this while because at the end of the day, we still build enterprise solutions. And one of the messaging about low code is you can experiment quickly, you can go to markets very quickly than you would have been able to do with traditional development.
Oh.
So yeah, I that there's a lot of value in the Power Platform, and as much as it's geared towards like that citizen developer mindset,
Mm.
you know, we see that we actually have organizations using this for their enterprise solutions. So
Mm.
part of what I do with organizations is in some cases, a citizen developer within the organization has put together a solution as a proof of concept. Then we now step in as experts to get it productionized. So even within the low code space, there's still that citizen developer space, which is less technical,
Mhm.
and there's the expat space, which is where I sit in.
But you say it's also Power Platform is also ready for enterprise, solutions.
Oh, yes, it's always been. I was having a conversation with my colleague on our podcast very recently, and she was talking with someone, and they said, well, local developers actually don't design for scalability.
Mm.
And well, the person explained what they meant to her, and what they were just saying is because of the way a lot of people learn low code, they don't learn it with that enterprise mindset. And I'll say I've been guilty of that too from the onset. When starting with low code and power platforms, there are solutions that I built, and after a few months, I realized, oh, that was actually a bad architectural decision, and adding some updates will now need like major redesign because at that point I didn't design for scalability and enterprise. But now I build solutions that are supported, that are used across the world, that I actually build platforms on the Power Platform that other developers take and they use it to extend their solutions. So
Mm.
it's about the mindset and the training basically. If you do things shabbily well, then your solution is not going to be enterprise ready. But if you do things properly with good architectural principles, then you would have an enterprise ready solution. So you could have the same tools, but use them very differently.
Okay. And what think you when we think about, the companies, what is the biggest misconceptions executives have about the low code platforms?
Um, I think one thing, because a lot of messaging about low code gears towards speed of execution,
Mm.
and then they just want everything immediately, right? And that causes some issues down the line because that means you do not do a proper discovery, you do not plan out your solution right, you do not do a proper project plan. And with low code, it's very easy to just skip all of those extra things and just jump to the solution because, as I said, you just need to go on the browser and you just start working. So I feel like that's the common misconception, that you can just open up a blank app and just start building without doing a proper solution design, without doing proper discovery. If you find yourself doing that, you probably have issues down the line.
And what did you think about, in the Power Platform, how good it is for governance, security, and risk topics?
Yeah, so everything is evolving, right? And I think that's one of the reasons why I love being in in the Microsoft space and in the Power Platform space in particular, because everything evolves. I'll say a couple of years ago there were not so much governance and administrative features, but that always keeps on evolving. Now we have more tools. We've also have community developed tools that you know kind of extend what Microsoft offers out of the box. And Microsoft, as we've seen, as even in the recent months and recent years, they're also try to meet up with those community developed tools so that there's like a quality tool within the Microsoft and Power Platform space for the governance. So I would say it's sufficient, and any areas that Microsoft doesn't provide out of the box, we do have opportunities to extend, because at the end of the day, some of these things are APIs, and you can actually build tools around those APIs and CLIs to get that custom functionality you want. So out of the box is good, but you can always still build up on it. And while being an MVP also, we do have ways of giving feedback to the product groups on some of the actual features that we find are being required in the real world, basically.
Mm. And I think when we look at LinkedIn and we read about especially the topic governance and Power Platform, there's one buzzword I would say is the COE as a Center of Excellence. What
Exactly.
what role do they play today?
So the COE very important, and as I said, if you the COE is really about ensuring that your solutions are very well supported, and you have your proper ALM. And COE, talking about COE as a concept, is not just about your tools. So your tools, the tools you have are involved in your COE, but more important than the tools is actually the people. So how are you actually supporting your citizen developers? How are you supporting your actual makers, the people building the solutions? How are you actually admining and governing the platform? So all of those things come together to become the COE. So yeah, a lot of times we just think of COE and we're thinking of tools and dashboards and maybe automations, but it's beyond that. Is really how you support your makers, how you support the platform itself and your solutions.
Yeah, and what's your experience how to bring in the makers into the platform and yeah, or make them successful? What's your tips here?
Yeah, yeah, and that's in my organization we do have engagements around COE, specifically COE and governance. And some of the things that we actually do is, in terms of, we don't want an IT system that just shuts everything down, right? And I do call that the old IT mindset, because with the old IT mindset, they just shut everything down and believe, well, yes, now we're secure. But when you shut everything down, you realize that people are actually creative. And in some cases, they will find other ways to do some things that would actually end up landing in the shadow IT world. So rather than having that, you want to actually support your makers so that you can help them to do the right things. So, for example, in Power Platform, there's this recently new concept called managed environments. And as part of managed environments, when somebody creates a resource for the first time, maybe creates an app for the first time, there's like an automation that can send them an onboarding email and say, oh, welcome to the Power Platform space. This is how we want you to do things. These are the connectors that are available for you to use. So in that case, you're kind of onboarding those users and you're directing them in the right ways. So that's an example of how you can kind of help those makers. We also have things like DLP policies. Um, like, say, for example, you do not want a user to create an automation that takes all your data and exports it to Twitter. And that's an example I used to do, because it's very easy. If you have the Twitter connector, you could just build an automation, export data from Dataverse, send it to Twitter every morning. But you don't want your users to be able to do that. So you can actually put DLP policies that define for every environment what should be possible, what users should be able to do. So as part of that onboarding, you can always give them that information, but you can get the platform itself to do some governance. That's an example of DLP policies, that there are other tools within the Power Platform that can allow the platform to kind of govern itself and restrict what people are able to do. So
Mm.
you can still have them work safely, right? But yes, don't lock it down. But what you want to try to do is you want to give them a safe space that they can explore and try things out. Because I say this on almost all my engagements, and because I've actually found it to be true, that a lot of great ideas come from the business users, because they are the one facing those challenges, right? And if you give them the tools to actually build some things, that can be a good level zero, right? It could be a good sprint zero, in the sense that they give you a foundation that you can now take on an IT and make it production ready.
Mm. Um, I think in the Power Platform, the has changed, yeah, in the last years, especially since Copilot. I think
Oh yeah,
Copilot everywhere in
yeah,
the Microsoft
yeah.
ecosystem. Um, what will you say? What is the biggest change? What AI bring to the Power Platform?
So yeah, this is very big, and a lot of my team, our development team, we do have lots of conversations around this a lot, because one thing that I myself have seen to change is there are loads of conversations about AI now, much more than it used to be before. Before, in the Power Platform space, is really about apps and automation. Well, we had Power Virtual Agents, but not many clients were engaging with us with Power Virtual Agents. But now, if there's like a curve, I think it's kind of turned over, because a lot of the conversations we're having now is AI first, then as part of the AI, then we build apps and automations to support it.
Mm.
So that language is kind of changing, where a lot is having to do with AI. And even from Microsoft, we do see that, well, a lot of the new features on the Power Platform are actually AI focused, right? So there's just that, there's the conversation is kind of shifted a lot to AI first. And Microsoft even comes and says, well, Copilot is the UI for AI. And they're actually building tools to enable users have AI as their first way of getting work done. So you
Mm.
start with AI, then it branches into other tools when necessary. So yeah, I feel like that's the major shift on the Power Platform now.
You are also an expert in Copilot Studio. And I think a lot of people think the Copilot Studio is the new, I don't know, Power Pages, Power Automate. Um, what think you differentiates Power or the Copilot Studio from the Power Platform, according
Well,
to
the
you?
Copilot Studio is part of the Power Platform, anyways. So it's not like different. It's because the Power Platform itself is like a suite of applications. So we have Power Apps, we have Power Automate. Well, we used to have Power BI. Power BI technically is still talked about in the context of Power Platform, but Power BI out here right now is a different product on its own, especially with Fabric in the picture, because Power BI is more like a Fabric thing now. But if you look at documentation, you may probably still say Power BI as being part of the Power Platform.
Well,
Then we also have Copilot Studio. So it's one of the tools, and a lot of solutions, especially when you're talking of enterprise solutions, they do not just sit on one of those tools. So you will hardly build an app that doesn't require an automation. You would hardly build a Copilot Studio agent that doesn't have maybe like an app interface somewhere, maybe for data entry or for viewing bulk data. So all of these things, they come together, and that's the whole idea of solution architecture anyway, where you're looking at all the tools available and you're deciding what tools are actually needed to solve this business problem. So the Copilot Studio is not outside the Power Platform. It's just one of the tools available within the Power Platform.
okay. Um, so we will a little bit talk about yeah, the from AI hype to business values. So um, can you say what is AI hype actually, and what delivered real value with Copilot AI?
Yeah. So yeah, the whole idea of hype, right? And I think even this morning I was still listening to like a recording by someone, and they were talking about how, well, is the AI bubble actually going to burst anytime soon? And there's always this notion about hype around AI. And when I hear AI hype, it kind of reminds me of the dot-com bubble. And in a lot of ways, people kind of relate this old AI hype to the dot-com bubble. But I was actually thinking of it before this call, and as much as the dot-com bubble ended up bursting, right? The fact still remains it was a technology revolution.
Mm,
And before the dot-com era, well, you could probably only browse the internet through your university. And even that was very novel and not everybody had access to it. But the dot-com bubble brought access to the internet to everyone, and everybody could start getting on the kind of bandwagon of the dot-com. So if you look at AI hype, I'm sure, yes, very possibly there's a hype somewhere in the sense that, but the hype really comes a lot from the business and investment side of things. Same thing we saw with the dot-com bubble. Technically, it was amazing. It was a breakthrough. But yes, some people kind of rode on that breakthrough and built unsustainable business models on it, and those ended up crashing. So
mm,
what I'm really trying to say is, yes, there's hype from like the business side of things, because, well, everybody now wants AI. Uh, Everybody wants an AI company now,
mm,
and at some point, I think in the 2020s, we had an era where if your AI is in your company, you just have investors throwing money at you. But I don't want that to take away the fact that we're actually in a revolution. And interestingly, between 2020 and today, there's been so much innovation around AI. So let's not take away that fact and just call it a bubble and end it there. Well, there
mm,
might be some bits of bubbles around investments going around, money exchanging hands, but the fact that it's still a technology revolution. And where it now comes into play, me being an architect in a consultancy, I just want to add value to organizations, right? I want to take AI as it is today and give them business value and deliver real projects with it. And that's what we've been doing even since, Copilots started coming up, Copilot Studio, well, Power Virtual Agents got rebranded as Copilot Studio. We've started engaging with clients and we've started delivering value around that. It's just about understanding what the current limitations of the technology are and scoping things properly. Sorry, and scoping things properly to fit within those limitations. If you do that, you can actually have a successful implementation.
mm. And what are, I say, metrics or KPIs you should or companies should track if this is a successful or a good AI investment?
So one metric that is easy and to track is when you're looking at things like your ROI, your return on investment. A lot of times, one of the very obvious ones is time saving. And if you implement an AI solution and people are actually spending more time doing the same things they were doing without AI, and now they're taking longer to do it, then that's automatically a failure. And I think in the early days of all these AI rollouts, there was a research that I heard about and I kind of read about too, where they researched and said, well, em- employees have 9 to 5. Now we've given them AI. Do they actually save? Do they actually, can they stop working by 4 o'clock? And that was a very interesting research because what they actually found out was, well, employees still worked 9 to 5, but the key difference was they could actually do more within that 9 to 5 hours. So I feel like as a human race, we would always have problems to solve. We would always have things to do. If we have tools that solve our current problems, we don't necessarily get that time back and just go on holiday. We will fill it up with other problems. So I feel like that was very interesting. So but time saving, the fact that your employees are able to do more within the time frame they used to originally do things, I feel like that's like one of the easiest measures. Some other measures too are things like adoption, which might not be so easy to track, but if you have an efficient way of tracking it, you can also tell stories about how people are actually using AI. On our podcast, there was a time we talked about AI, and a colleague talked about a friend who, well, she had access to Copilot, but she hadn't been doing it. So she said after she listened to that stuff on our podcast, then she started doing more with Copilot. And she was like, oh, wow, I can actually do all this. So there's that adoption piece where we could have given people access to AI and AI agents and all that, but how are they actually using it? Are they using it effectively? So I could build a tool that saves you time, but if you don't use it well, you're not going to get that time saving. And yeah, it's part of what we do anyways, because in a lot of ways, imagine going to an organization that's been doing something a particular way for hundreds of years or for tens of years, right? And now you've come and say, well, let's do it this way with AI. There's that adoption piece, which a lot of projects don't really accommodate for that. They don't really plan that adoption piece into it. And there are some people that are actually adoption and change management specialists. So I feel like every AI implementation should have some form of ACM bolted in, and just to make sure that you are tracking the right KPIs, and you are able to measure how much the new tool is being used. Because if it's not being used, as I said, you're not going to get value from it.
And how can companies say, okay, this is a good business case, and that's I don't know, not so good business case? What your tips here when they will start with Copilot Studio?
Yeah. So I'll say something that my boss usually says, and she's like, "What?" When she's speaking to clients, she's like, "Okay, what part of your day don't you like?" So what is the just picture your day and see what's that activity that you do not like, or you feel like you should not be the one doing this, right? Those kind of activities can start showing you some use cases for AI. Because when you look at the whole idea of automation in the first place, and especially sometimes when I'm delivering training about automation, we say, yeah, we want to automate the repetitive, the boring tasks, right? So now with AI, we can even take it a step further, because with AI, there's that reasoning capacity. So previously, automation could only handle things that, well, it's more repetitive and there's more novelty in it. But now with AI, we can actually automate some scenarios that actually require intelligence and reasoning. So I feel like that's big game changer that AI brings to the table. So when you're trying to discover use cases, and yeah, we do have engagements around working with clients to come up with those use cases. But one of those ways is just look at your day and see, okay, what are the things that I do not like to do? Another thing you could see is, okay, what are the things that I would like an assistant for? So imagine you have an assistant. What kind of tasks can I comfortably give my assistant? And maybe I just go through what the assistant does, right? There will definitely be some tasks that you say, well, this one I absolutely must do it myself. But you will definitely have some cases where you can delegate this to an assistant. So that can also be another way of finding out some of those use cases for AI.
Have you a use case without exposing the company's name where you say, well, this was an amazing one?
Okay, so yeah, this is one, and I like to talk about this a lot because we did it in the early days of Copilot Studio, and yeah, it was more tedious than it will have been now, but it was still a good one. So basically, this organization, they do generate, well, they didn't generate that before, but they do pull together some documentation, like sales guide documentation. And to do the sales guide documentation, they would have to like do research around their competitors, compare the numbers, and just try and come up with kind of differentiators of how their product is different from the other the competitor products. And so there's like that research piece, and there's the documentation piece, the messaging, writing it in their organization, in their organization language, the way they speak and things like that. There was also the bit about translating it to multiple languages, right? So while after they had the whole document, they will need to make it translated to other languages. So you can see this has like so many different components, right? But we were able to build like an AI agent to do all of this, where they just upload a few such documents, and the AI agent goes, does all that research, brings it together, well, includes the sources where it's gotten all those information from, and just help them through that end-to-end process. So something that would have taken maybe a week or 5 days, well, now it's taking minutes, and they can still take that output and, make sure it's valid and just do some checking. And one thing about this thing is, over time, then the confidence can increase in the solution. When you see something and you're saying that, well, it's 90% of the time is getting it right, then you begin to trust it more. So, but in the early stages, you might be like, oh, I need to check everything. But as time goes on, when you see it behaving predictably, consistently, then you would kind of start getting more of those times saved. So I'll say
Um,
that's an example. Another example is an organization that is more like an admission board, where they have some criteria for admission. And so this one is kind of where AI gives recommendations, but AI don't make the decision. And that's another distinction that is good, because as we go through and start implementing AI, now we do not want AI to be the final decision maker in some cases, right? But we just want AI to be able to give us recommendations that says, well, based on your documentation, based on your documents, your criteria, these candidates fit your criteria. But we are not saying, well, these are the only candidates you should look at, right? So, but these candidates do fit your criteria, but we're still leaving the ultimate decision to the human to actually make the final decision. So we don't want to automate everything, but AI can actually help, because rather than going through a 200 page document, AI can just help you highlight some key points of key areas that you might have even missed if you had to sit down and go through the 200-page document. So yeah, those are some use cases. But yeah, we've had so many AI use cases, as I've said. The conversations are really changing a lot to AI first. So, well, those are some two use cases that I find very interesting.
Yeah, that's cool use case. I think a little bit about a lot of companies or a buzzword AI readiness or copilot readiness. What will you think is the minimum requirement a company must have to be successful or to implement Copilot Studio?
Okay. Yeah, it's good that you actually said Copilot Studio, not Copilot. Because if it's Copilot, it becomes a bigger conversation. Because Copilot, it's um it's really hard to put Copilot in a box, because Copilot is very dependent, especially when you go to the more premium tiers, that you have things like work IQ. So with those ones, it really uses your organization data, in the sense that it has access to your organization data. I don't know how else to say that. So that's where it starts exposing things like, oh, where you can actually find some information that, well, HR probably didn't want you to find, but because you've been added to a SharePoint site, maybe for something, now you have access to all of that data. So AI will expose that, especially when you're talking about Copilot. But I really love the world of Copilot Studio because with Copilot Studio, you can actually put AI in the box. Now, if your organization data is not in the right place, as and that's actually part of the whole AI readiness conversation. Even at that stage, I can still build Copilot Studio agents for you, and you can still use it safely without having issues with the rest of your organization data. Because with Copilot Studio agents, you can actually point to the actual knowledge sources you want it to use. And you can turn off things like work IQ. Even though your organization data is in a mess, then you're definitely not going to be turning on work IQ because that's just going to expose everything. So with Copilot Studio, and that's why a lot of solutions, especially early on with clients, maybe they're not so far on that AI readiness journey. They could actually start with simple use cases developed in Copilot Studio, because with Copilot Studio, we can actually restrict what data sources, what access the agent has, and that just doesn't expose the whole mess that the organization data might be in.
Okay. And I can do this without you touching, I don't know, PureView and so on. I can do all this in Copilot Studio.
So it all goes hand in hand. Um, in like say you leveraging some SharePoint documents, right? Now, within Purview, you can specify what the labeling should be, what whether it's confidential and the likes. You can do that within Purview. Now, when that becomes ingested by Copilot Studio is going to leverage all that you've done in Purview. Now, if you've not done anything in Purview, Copilot Studio will still work with that data, but it's not going to assume any sensitivity labels. It's just going to treat everything as not sensitive. So they work hand in hand. And if it's truly non-sensitive, maybe you don't have to do anything with Purview. But if there are things that you need to categorize properly, then Purview comes into the picture. So it's really about what you're trying to do. But yeah, there are definitely Copilot use cases that do not need Purview because you don't need all of those sensitivity labeling.
Okay.
So it's really, it depends on the extent of conversations you're having and what you're really trying to achieve, really.
And up when we look a lot of technology, um, but what kind of for success plays the company culture, change management. So I think all around the people.
Yeah. So, if I get the question right, you're asking what, how does the people component impact the AI
Yeah.
implementations?
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. So there's the bit around governance. I think I'll start from governance because, well, you might be like, oh, you asked about people, but I'm talking about governance because what I initially wanted to say before governance was people doing the right things, right? But what governance allows you to do is it allows you to kind of provide a structure for people to easily do the right things. So, say talking about document sharing, um, you can actually implement governance that restricts the way documents are shared in your organization, right? And that will just automatically help them to do the right things and
Hmm.
prevent issues where somebody has actually been shared a document that they shouldn't have been shared and now they have access to the whole SharePoint site. So the people conversation starts from governance, having the right governance framework, having the right governance tools in place, clicking the right buttons, disabling the right things. That just ensures people do the right thing. So every AI conversation starts from your governance. And there's some clients that have come to us and said, well, we want to do this and this and this. And we're like, wait, before we start that conversation, let's actually talk about your governance and let's sort this out first. Because, well, you could build a fancy tool and It's adding value in the way it's supposed to, but it could start exposing some other issues
Mm,
because you've not handled that governance piece first.
yeah, that's a little bit deep dive in the governance topic,
Yeah.
especially with AI. What or how should companies start with governance, especially when they like to start with the whole co-pilot world?
Yeah.
What's your tip?
So, how should they start with governance? Well, the real answer to that is first of all, what tools do you have available? And the reason why I said that's a real answer is within the Microsoft stack, the different licensing stack, different licensing stacks actually give you access to different tools. So the more beefier the more you pay, the more you get, basically. Um, if you pay more, you get some advanced tools that can help you do some more things. So the first real bit of that is what tools do you have access to. Now, the next bit around that is how do you use those tools? Do you use them properly? Now, I've spoken to many IT admins that do not actually know the right places to go do the admin, to do the admin and governance pieces. And it's not necessarily their fault. In many cases, this same IT admin is doing so many other things, right? And the priority is very different. They have like so many different hats they're wearing. So it's hard to be like very focused on just one particular bit. So as I said, the first thing is what tools do you have available? Following on from that, are you using those tools properly? Because if you're using the tools properly, then you have like better governance. Then, never forgetting the people aspect, the bit around training, around empowering people to do the right thing. So by giving them the right frameworks, but also giving them the right knowledge, giving them the right training on how to maximize the tools they have in their disposal. So yeah, governance conversations, they're always big conversations, and we have like always have big name people on the conversations like infosec, compliance officers and things like that. But yeah, as as we both know, right, that's usually the first bit to start, because once you have good governance in place, then you have that confidence, because that's why we do all of that effort, right? To have that confidence, and we can actually sleep well at night and know that nothing is going to break overnight.
And another topic, I work more with AI Foundry, but another topic is what I often hear. It's security concerns. So how to make this Copilot Studio secure? What's your tips here?
So yeah, I noticed you mentioned AI Foundry there. And I'll say that's one of the distinctions between AI Foundry and Copilot Studio, in the sense that with things like AI Foundry, you get to manage a lot yourself. But with Copilot Studio, you manage less because you're using a managed platform. So that's the whole idea of low code. So AI Foundry, you can't really call it, as much as AI Foundry abstracts some of the code required to do all of these AI things, but you can't necessarily call AI Foundry a low code platform. But Copilot Studio is a low code platform. So there are things that Microsoft actively does to kind of manage and protect the platform itself. So the bit you will need to focus on is really in terms of your agent's design. So have you designed the agent in a way that, and I was saying on that podcast recently that one thing I like to do anytime I design an agent is ask it a very irrelevant question and see what it says. If I ask it an irrelevant question and it's answering me, then I know that, I've actually missed something in the design. So within the Copilot Studio world, you get to just focus on more like your design, your agent's design, and just make sure that that is tight. Microsoft handles a lot of the things around things like DDoS protection, prompt injection, and stuff like that. So if you're building something custom yourself, you will be needing to engineer those bits in, but within Copilot Studio, those are kind of covered by Microsoft, and you just focus on the agent's design piece.
And what I also think, there are a lot of horror stories out there about finance, because we don't pay this only the $30 for for Copilot. We also pay for tokens.
Yeah.
Uh, so what's your tip on on fine ops, so that the the CFO don't get a heart attack?
Yeah, that's interesting, and it. If you look at it, well, all these organizations, Microsoft, Google, OpenAI, they're really because it's such a new space ish. It's not so new because we've been at this for at least 6 years. But they try to do what's called like land grabbing, and they try to just take that market share. And because of that, if you look at the whole idea of tokens, well, they've really subsidized a lot of the actual cost, and they've just made it look cheap. And in some cases now, we're seeing a form of change of mind where they're like, oh, well, this is actually not sustainable. Now we have to start letting the users bear some of the real costs. The way I see this is I feel like over time it's still going to get better because like every technology, it's over time it gets cheaper. And as we speak, there are loads of research going around different areas of this whole LLMs and this new AI implementation, right? So loads of research are going around data centers, around sustainability and things like that. So I feel like over time it's going to get better and it won't be as expensive as it is now. But the fact is, right now is really expensive. In a lot of ways, Microsoft in particular tries to roll things up into like a license, right? Like a subscription cost. Right now, we still have this, so I feel like let's enjoy it as much as we can until until they want to start changing things. And because now, if you look at GitHub Copilot now, I feel like that's really where lots of horror stories are coming in, and people are saying that, well, how can I use my subscription for a month in a day? What do I do for the rest of the month? Right. So that it wasn't like that a few weeks ago, right? Because a few weeks ago, Microsoft was still happy to bear that cost. But now they're like, well, we can't continue to do this. And that's where you see Microsoft saying, well, we can give the free copilots to organizations less than a certain amount of members. But once they have more than a, I can't remember what the number is right now, but once they have more than that number, then they don't get the free copilot. That's because there's actual real cost behind the scenes. They try to cover it up and so that you can subscribe and get that get the license, the latest and the shiny license. But yeah, the fact is the real costs are beginning to show. But my confidence is over time those real costs are actually going to go down and we'll get to a point where the AI and agentic use cases become much more sustainable and much more affordable. And I actually believe there's a future of local LLMs where you have a LLM on your machine that is actually doing a lot of heavy lifting. Right now, I did install some local LLMs and I'm doing some like image processing categorization on my computer offline without well, does it need the internet? Maybe not, because yeah, it's really local on my computer. So I believe there's going to be a future of local large language models, but yeah, everything is still dependent on the research that is being done all around the world right now.
Mm. Yeah, I think another option, I don't know if it's possible in Copilot Studio, but on AI Foundry, it's use local models.
Yeah.
Also, I don't need the biggest model for everything, so I can say,
Yeah,
okay,
that's the thing.
for
Yeah, that's
me,
the thing.
I don't know if it's also possible in Copilot Studio to change the models.
Well, so in Copilot Studio, you can change models, though you're definitely not using local models because that is they are all web is a web solution basically. So you won't be using a local model there, though you can probably architect something that leverages a local model if that's really what you want to do and just have endpoints that talk to each other. But out of the box, Copilot Studio, you can select models, you can switch models, so you're not just locked into one model. You can change models, and one other workflow is you could actually have a model from Azure AI Foundry, and you can still leverage that within your Copilot Studio agent. But you won't be working with local models out of the box on Copilot Studio.
Yeah, nice. So that's cool. So now we can join the quick fire round. I ask you a
Okay.
question and you give me a short answer. What
Yeah.
first coming to mind? So
Yeah.
Power Apps or Power Automate?
Power Automate.
Okay. Canvas app or model-driven apps?
Canvas apps.
Copilot Studio or traditional chatbot development?
Copilot Studio, please.
One Microsoft technology people should pay more attention to.
Um, Copilot Studio.
When Microsoft comes to you tomorrow and say you get unlimited money, people, and so on, what will you develop?
Microsoft. I will develop something that makes me money and I don't have to work again.
It's good. Uh, what is one overrated trend in tech?
One what?
One overrated trend actually in tech.
Oh, this is tough. Overrated trend in tech. AI content creation.
And what was the best career advice you ever received?
Hmm. The best career advice I've ever received is really about is really about politics and it's more like play the game. So play the career game. I think that's the best career advice I've ever received.
Um, is there a book, resource, podcast, or so on you recommend to everyone should read, especially in technology?
So I'll say stay tuned to the Power Platform Deep Dive podcast.
Yeah. I also put this in the show notes for the
Yeah,
people so they find it out.
thank
Um,
you.
if you weren't work in tech, what would you be doing?
I will be so if I'm not in tech, I will be doing video production and telling stories.
Ah, awesome. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. So my last question is when we think about this episode and there are people they are starting with Power Platform today, what point or what is the key point they should take from this discussion today?
So yeah, I'll say do not just focus on the technical implementation. Sorry, I'll take that again. I'll say do not just focus on the technical implementation because in many cases that's just like 60% or even 50% of the story. There is so many other bits around governance and adoption that are very important because you could do all the technical bits, but it still fails because you've not done stuff around governance and adoption.
Yeah, so then I say thank you for joining me today on the M65 FM podcast. It was, yeah, I really enjoyed this conversation because it brought a practical, realistic perspective to topicals that, yeah, are often surrounded by hype. Whatever we are talking about, Power Platform, Copilot, enterprise architecture, or AI adoption, yeah, one message stood out clearly. Successful transformation is never just about technology, it's about people, governance, business outcomes and building solutions that can scale. So yeah, thank you. This was so awesome. Thank you for your time.
Yes, thank you so much, Marco. I really enjoyed every bit of this. And yeah, looking forward to see the recording.
Goodbye. Ciao.
Okay, cheers. Bye.